it's about to get really, really, really warm in here. Check this out. Listen to this. I think that's pretty cool. The whole point of that is to show you that I am a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I love these films. I'm like one of those like in between normies. I never read too much of the comics. I probably read as much up until at the age of like 10, after which I just dropped it, and then I found out the movies were coming out. So I was like, okay, cool, let's watch the movies. And then the movies became this thing that I had to watch in cinema every time they come out. I had to research every line, delve into every line so I can make connections between films, and it just became this thing that I shall now forever be attached to. I've loved all 23 films, is that correct? Up until Endgame, and anybody who's a fan of the universe knows that the Phase 3 was a culmination. So as any MCU fan, the question was, so what's Phase 4 going to be like? And with the release of Black Widow, Phase 4 was off to a start. As I said in my last movie review, I look for 3 different things when it comes to a good movie, and that is a good narrative, character development, and a satisfying ending. I'm going to put this film that I watched through that machine and give you my verdict on whether this film was any good. Let's not beat around the bush, let's get straight into it. Was it a good narrative? No. I'm sorry, that's going to hurt a lot of people out there, especially if you're a fan of the film, but the fact of the matter is, I'm a fan of these films. I love these films that much. So I see this film through MCU glasses, goggles, whatever you want to call them, and I'll be comparing them. So I try to remain, objective, I guess, not wanting to give them too much. Don't want to stack up this film too much, because at the end of the day, it's a Black Widow solo film. She's one of the Avengers and one of the unenhanced Avengers as well. So she's never going to have a cinematic roller coaster, electricity shooting everywhere, flying hammers, amazing robotic suit, all that kind of stuff. It was going to be a lot more grounded, which it delved into. But this is about the narrative, and as far as the narrative goes, I'm disappointed to say that it's a tried and tested spy formula that's been done in the past. You have a obscure, shady villain that was teased in the original MCU Phase 1, which people have been waiting to be paid off. Okay, when Loki drops the Dreykov's daughter line, you're like, what the hell is that? When they talk about the Red Room, you want to know what the hell is that? And this film answered those questions. That's what it's supposed to do. But was it worth the 9-year wait? That's the question. Was it worth the 9-year wait? And unfortunately, no, it wasn't, because the answer just came off very, very, it's this simple, actually. By context, you could have assumed if a daughter was involved, at least through my head. I heard the words Dreykov's daughter come out of Loki's mouth, and Black Widow was like, oh no. Or at least, she was pretending, but she was like, oh no. You can think, okay, did she accidentally kill someone's daughter? The subversion here is that she did not accidentally kill the daughter. It was very, 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 very much deliberate, but you knew that the daughter was dead. So it wasn't like the answer that you were waiting for. Up until now, we know that Natasha Romanoff has had a troubled upbringing because of the whole Red Room experience. She was raised as a killer from a very, very young age. And the film has this I think it's a very, very, really good opening. Idea is they copied a trait from the Incredible Hulk film, one of the forgotten films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, in that the entire origin was basically done over a credit sequence, which was very, very interesting. And I thought it was a very, very good way to get into the film. Having said that, it peaked there for me. That was the best that the film got in terms of narrative, because I for one wanted to see what kind of torture does that sound sadistic? I wanted to see what kind of torture the girls were put through at the beginning, because you wanted to see why Black Widow is the way she is. It's because she went through some shit. She went through a lot of bad shit. That's why she's as good as she is. The problem with this story was always going to be this one thing, okay? The reaction to the announcement that this film was going to get made was very, very 50-50 split. On one hand, people were very happy that Natasha Romanoff was finally getting the solo film treatment, a film solely based around her, so she can have all the narrative focused on her instead of being a part of it. And then the second half was going to be, it's a bit late, isn't it? We kind of already know everything we need to know about Black Widow. And after watching this film, I definitely fall on the latter side, because I was waiting for this film to add some more emotional context to her story. But then after watching, I realized that in all the appearances she's made, Iron Man 2, the first Avengers movie, Winter Soldier, second Avengers movie, Civil War, Infinity War, and then Endgame, I've already gotten her full story. And I've learned to appreciate the fact that you can get the tragedy of her past just from the from the small context you get from those movies, which means the movie was kind of setting itself up to be not as good as it should have been, because first of all, it takes place after Civil War, which was an amazing film with a lot of big stakes, but then after Infinity War and Endgame, those stakes were drastically reduced. Civil War seems so small compared to obviously what happened in Infinity War and Endgame, and because this film takes place after Civil War, you're not that bothered about the stakes anymore, because first of all, you know that she's going to make it out totally fine by the end, and at the end of the day, it just kind of seemed like the story was shoehorned in. 100% you could remove this film from the continuity of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and it would not have any effect, which is sad to say, but it's a harsh truth. But let's go on to character development. Now, in regards to Black Widow, in regards to Natasha Romanoff, there is none. She is the same character at the beginning of the modern day story of the film as compared to the end, because like I said, you remove this from the continuity of the story, the universe is the exact same. You don't see her go through any other character development because honestly, at this point, she is already a very well fleshed out character. She's actually one of the better characters that you'll get in the entire MCU because the people that have taken charge of the movies have already done very well, and a lot of the credit goes to Scarlett Johansson for an absolutely amazing performance as Black Widow up until now. Like, what more could you add? You already know that she's a tortured assassin. This movie tried to hammer home that point, but it didn't need hammering home. The nail was already hammered way deep in. She was the badass character at the beginning of this film and the badass character at the end of the film. That didn't change. She certainly met her match when it came to the physical villain of the film, which was Taskmaster. But that's literally because Taskmaster's thing, his power, is to copy basically the move of the other person. Now, speaking of Taskmaster and his powers, I'll be doing a section on Taskmaster in a little bit as well, and you'll see what I mean. But the reason why I want to talk specifically about character development in this film was not actually because of Black Widow, but because of Black Widow. So there's another character in the story, Yelena Belova. She is the adopted sister of Natasha Romanoff in the story, and she is without a doubt the best part of the entire film. Like, no question. David Harbour is very, very good in this film in terms of comedy and added that comical aspect of being the counterpart to Captain America for Soviet Russia, but it was played up for laughs most of the time, and David Harbour is hilarious, so you watch that film for him. He does get a little bit of subtle character development in terms of the father figure who didn't want to be a father but ended up being very, very caring towards his surrogate daughters being Natasha and Yelena. But Yelena Belova has already won me over, and the idea is in this film she is being set up or teed up to be the next Black Widow because she's that good. She's, first of all, not only a badass character, you know, she's got the fight set down, she's got the... Florence Pugh has got that Russian accent down so well. It passes off so well. That you'd think that she was from there. It's done very, very well. But at the same time, she's very, very quippy as well. Whereas Natasha Romanoff has a kind of a very subtle jabs at other characters every now and then. Yelena will just full on make the joke, even if no one's around her, because she's very much that character. She's not trying to show off. There's a joke in the film where she says that the Avengers are posers, you know, making the superhero stance and all that kind of stuff. Whereas Yelena's not a poser. She won't do the pose in front of people. She'll do the pose when people aren't looking, and then she'll be like, I absolutely hate that I've done that, which was one of the jokes in the film. She's also got a copy and paste formula of the backstory of Natasha Romanoff, but the difference is that she very much misses the version of the life that she had. Whereas Natasha Romanoff went on and found a new family, Yelena didn't, and she's still looking. And then after the events of Endgame, now that she's realised that Natasha's died on Vormir, she's once again feeling alone. It looks like she's very much set up to be a big future counterpart of this Phase 4 of Marvel, which is also to say that if you haven't started watching the Disney Plus shows, watch them. They are going to be very important. You are going to miss out on things if you watch just the films from now on. If you don't watch the Disney Plus shows, you're going to miss out, which means Disney has effectively monopolized my entertainment field when it comes to my TV shows and my movies, because half the TV shows now I'm watching are going to be part of a bigger cinematic universe, which is crazy. So yeah, Yelena Belova, big win. On to the more disappointing. Okay, Natasha Romanoff wasn't disappointing, it was just bog standard, but disappointing. Taskmaster. I'm gonna start off by saying I love the new Spider-Man game that came out. When I say new Spider-Man game, I mean Spider-Man, not Spider-Man with Miles Morales. Still a good game. 2018 Spider-Man, very good game. Gameplay, mechanic-wise, one of the most fun games I've ever played, and one of my favorite bosses you fight in the game is of course Taskmaster. Now, why is he fun? First of all, I love his powers, okay? He's a mimic. He has like an eidetic memory, and it translates to muscle as well, because he's able to basically copy any move of the person that fights him, as long as he's seen it beforehand. Now, the Taskmaster in Black Widow does that effectively, but the trailers were basically, there was this idea in the trailers, who is Taskmaster? Because while he is fully clad in armor and a helmet all the time, even in the comic lore, you then realize in the trailers he doesn't speak. Now, the Taskmaster in the game has one of the most amazing voices. It's like very dry and raspy, and you're like, okay, this guy's cool. This guy's actually cool.
Surprise me if you can.
But the voice is never spoken during the marketing of the films, which means you can tell that there's meant to be some kind of rug pull. Here's where the setup of the film was very much ruined for me. I stayed away from a lot of the marketing later to release, so I don't know if this was revealed anyway, but during the opening credits of the film, an actress who I only know from Johnny English Strikes Again is Olga Kurylenko. I've probably butchered that name. Her name appears during the credits, and I'm thinking, oh, is she gonna be like a widow or something? And she never shows up. So then obviously about 10 minutes before the reveal happens, when Taskmaster's helmet comes off, I'm thinking, oh wait, they haven't shown Taskmaster's voice or face because maybe she's a woman. Maybe it's Olga Kurylenko. And lo and behold, it was Olga Kurylenko when they took the mask off. And I was like, 10 minutes before it ever happened, it was ruined for me, because if anything, they should have just gone full on Seven and just not have her name in the credits at the beginning at all, because then it might have actually been genuinely like, whoa, I know her. But the overall comic lore, or at the very least what I know of Taskmaster, was ruined. Unless they plan to bring back Olga Kurylenko as Taskmaster in the future. They've muted the character. From a character-based perspective, I don't see this version of the character wanting to keep fighting as Taskmaster. To give a little bit of context, Dreykov's daughter, who was supposedly killed by Black Widow in order for her to defect to S.H.I.E.L.D., turns out is alive and becomes Taskmaster. Dreykov basically turns her into a widow by brainwashing her, whatever. She can't even resist obeying his orders, and chucks her in a suit and she becomes Taskmaster. The implication of the situation is, what it looks like to me is that she has been trained to be Taskmaster since her accident as a child. That's what it looks like. She was recovered, and then I didn't see her living. I didn't see her like going to school or whatever, and then she becomes Taskmaster. It looks like maybe Dreykov raised her as Taskmaster, which means mentally she's still a child. Even her last lines are even, is he gone? After Black Widow's killed Dreykov, which means she's still very much got that childlike fear of her dad. I don't see that kind of character wanting to carry on being Taskmaster. Do you guys? Because I don't. Which means Taskmaster for me looks like it's effectively done. It would be very cool if they can find a way to bring the character back, but the version of the character that I like doesn't exist in this universe apparently. So there you have it. Dreykov, big evil bad guy behind the organization.
He's bad guy. Oh, he's bad guy.
That's literally the extent of it. It's very, very messed up, the stuff that he does, but overall it's forgettable. It's not, I'm not going to spend too long talking about Dreykov, because I wasn't that terrified. The reason why is because there's a section of the film where you see Dreykov beating up Black Widow, but when you keep watching the film, you realize that she was trying to get him to beat her up in order to break the conditioning over Black Widow harming him. Dreykov never really scared Black Widow to begin with, the moment that them two met up in the film. So there wasn't that sense of looming like fear or anything like that. There wasn't a villain that gave Black Widow a match mentally or emotionally in this film, compared to other films where she's been scared. In Avengers, when she looked terrified that the Hulk was about to kill her. Terrified. Having said that, Hulk, Dreykov, I know what you're saying, but it's the idea that somebody's meant to have that kind of emotional power over you. It seems like at this point, the only people that have the emotional power over Black Widow is an extension of herself and those closest to her, the ones that she actually cares about. It would have been interesting to see if there was a mountain for her to climb. The fact that there was a villain that's got her mentally, like has her checkmate, and then she can break that. But she was never checkmate in this film. This film barely posed a challenge for Black Widow. So Dreykov, bad guy, the bad guy, like not good bad guy. And on to the last part, satisfying ending. Did this film have a satisfying ending? We knew how the film was going to end. The film was going to end with Black Widow triumphing with minimal consequence, because the consequence has already been explored in Infinity War and Endgame. You knew that she was going to get out just fine. The most jarring thing about the ending here was that there's a time jump of 2 weeks from after they've killed Dreykov to when she has the blonde hair from Infinity War. Now the film ends with a bunch of government agents arriving on the scene and Black Widow staying behind so that the freed widows as well as Yelena and Red Guardian escaping could happen. So you think that maybe she either turns herself in for some reason, or we see that she beats them up and leaves, which I think is what was implied. I think there were a lot of cars that came in. There were about 20 cars. She apparently took them all on single-handed and managed to escape. Is that what happened? Like, she's good, but are we just meant to assume that is what's happened? I watched it with my cousin in cinema and he said, wouldn't that made more sense if she just kind of got on the plane with the others? That would explain how they escaped. Clearly I'm missing something. This film's testing my MCU like brain game level, because I have no idea. I'm assuming she just beat them up then. That's gotta be what happened if you ask me. The film answers the question of where the hell did they get a Quinjet from, because they have a Quinjet in Infinity War. It's a question that I never asked and I didn't need answering, so I didn't really care. The satisfying part of this ending is the credit scene. Now the credit scene for me is important because it's showing more of the future, and it was also a big WTF moment for me because we see Valentina, who in the comics is known as Madame Hydra, who also appears in Captain America and the Winter Soldier, which it's now called after the end of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But she's in the Disney Plus show and now she's shown up in the film. So these TV shows are very, very much part of the phase 4 of the MCU. Valentina shows up at Black Widow's grave where Yelena is mourning. We learned that Yelena is actually working with Valentina. Now, if you've watched Captain America and the Winter Soldier, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but it's Captain America. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, you'll know that Valentina has already recruited a US agent, and now we know that she has Yelena as well. Now the idea is they're meant to be forming some kind of either Dark Avengers, or it might be the MCU's version of the Thunderbolts, which is basically like Marvel's Suicide Squad. Good thing is they've already got likable characters. People didn't really get the point. People didn't understand what the point of US agent was. They were saying, wow, this Captain America sucks compared to Chris Evans, but that was the point. He was meant to be bad. So you've already got this kind of unstable character in US agent versus a very likable character in the new Black Widow. It looks like a Black Widow story coming full circle. It's meant to be the idea that a Black Widow character breaking free of these people who are trying to control her, I think. So she's working for them now. She might not well be working for them in the future, considering that her version of the character is adored by fans right now. They like, if she was to take place in the new Avengers, everybody would be on it. Absolutely. I just thought it was very intriguing to see that that's how connected these things are, and it's good to know that we're getting more of her in the future, which I think is a good plus for the future of the future is looking a lot more. We're getting more foundations now. We're getting a lot more foundations in terms of what this MCU phase 4 is going to be. We're going to see what happens now with the releases of Spider-Man 3 coming out soon, Spider-Man No Way Home. It'll be very, very interesting to see what the immediate aspects are going to be, considering if what we've heard is correct and the film is going to be very, very multiversal. It's going to be a very, very big league away from the grounded nature of the Black Widow film. But was the film any good? It's a 3 out of 5. Honestly, it was a good film. It's a very enjoyable film. The very good set pieces for me are just more about awe and spectacle. There were good set pieces, but it's not what I'm looking for in a good film. If you could give a good story, good monologues, good development, then it's fine. So if you want to watch for good set pieces, watch the film. I don't regret buying the ticket. This is the first film I watched in the cinema since Tenet last year. I was so glad to be back watching an MCU film. So this film is going to have a place in my heart for being that MCU film that's not only been the first one I've watched since 2019, but for getting me back in the theatre, feeling like a kid watching those films that he loves again. But it will be one of those films where in the future you could technically forget about it and you don't need to worry about the story. If you wanted to have someone crash course through the MCU, they would not need to watch this film unless you really love Florence Pugh. Then get in on this film because she is amazing in this film. I probably missed out some stuff. Let me know if there's anything I missed out. I'll probably take this discussion into the comments as well. Like I said, I love these films and I love talking about them. Yeah, that's everything for now. Thank you for watching this review. Leave a like, subscribe if you think this is a very good review. Is this review any good? Roll credits.